So yeah, do you want to do the intro or do you want me to?
Yeah, you should do it.
Probably do it. Thank you. I haven't written anything down. I probably should have thought about it. Okay, let's get it over with. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining our recording here. We're going to do something different today. Roman and I are together and we're going to go through the monthly news of the PHP world. And Roman compiles a monthly list on our JetBrains blog. We're going to go through it, share some of our insights and opinions on the things we find interesting.
So the first topic we had in this compilation is minor releases of the current branches of PHP. Those are minor releases and just contain security fixes. So you should definitely go update. If you want to see the full changelog, it's here. And the security issue is this one. It's marked with CVE. The next topic is our roadmap of PHPStorm. Pretty interesting. We started doing roadmaps since last release, and it was really well received. Thank you all for providing your feedback. Let's go through what's coming in this release. So one of the main, or maybe not main, but just frequent complaints about PHPStorm was performance. And we know about this. Try to improve it with every release. But this time we're considering this like a major project for release. And we try to address it in several directions. First of all, basically just make everything faster indexing, faster code insights, but also there are two interesting ideas that team is going to implement. Make some actions available during indexing, because if you think about it, if you already have an index of some project and you added some library or whatever, and PHPStorm starts reindexing, you could still use the old index, right? Just to access some code, for example, just to navigate to some class or file. I mean, file is easy, but to class, it was not possible before. Like if you tried to use go to class in previous versions, it would not work. Like you would see an empty list there, but now it will work.
Cool.
And also the other one that I like is shared indexes. So PHPStorm builds indexes for your project, but it also builds for your dependencies, right? And some dependencies, they are like, we all have them. Like for example, a Symfony console, or maybe some Symfony polyfills, or for example, even Laravel framework, right? So many people use it. And why would you want to rebuild it every time on every machine in the world who uses Laravel? What the team will try to do is to implement a shared index. So this is the index pre-built on CI machines beforehand, and then shared somewhere on the internet. On JetBrains servers. When you open IDE, PHPStorm will check your dependencies, your composer JSON, and see if there is a specific version of a tool there in your composer JSON. And if the downloadable index is available, it will try to download it. But there is an interesting moment here. So if you have a modern machine, like, I don't know, latest MacBook with M2 CPU with lots of RAM, probably rebuilding index will be faster than downloading it.
Okay.
So, but PHPStorm will be smart. It will understand which one is faster, and in the worst case, the indexing will not be slower. Like it will be the same.
Okay.
But it could be at some situations that it will be faster. What is also interesting, and I mentioned it here, is that you can actually pre-build indexes for your private projects. And you can check this example. So this guy, he built index for Shopware. Shopware is a e-commerce tool, e-commerce project. So what he did is he built index and shared it. So you could do it with your own projects and just add it to your version control, probably.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So the other one And I also like this one. It's running code with eval.org. So if you're not familiar, eval.org is, let's open it. It's a popular service where you can just type any code and run it on all versions of PHP available. But what is also cool is that you could even run it on master branch. So master is something that contains new features for upcoming releases, currently 8.3, and it also has RFC branches and like literally any version. So with PHPStorm 2023.1, you will be able to run Scratch files on eval. It's pretty cool just to test snippets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are many.
You can run local PHP code on any given version you want to without having to install any new PHP binding.
Exactly.
Right? That's
Cool. Exactly. You don't need to install it. So you could have 8.2 installed locally and then run it on any previous versions or on the next versions. For example, if you have 8.0 and you want to test your code, some piece of code on 8.2, you don't need to install it. You can test it here. Pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, there are some other things we will not go maybe in details. You can check the blog post to learn more. We improved generic support. I know you like it, Brent.
Yeah, I do. It's very nice to see this this list over here. I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. And we also gonna support all PHP standard Psalm tags.
Nice. They keep creating new ones, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason we need to add them. Yeah.
And also some of the tags are just, for example, like API immutable. They are supported in PHPStorm, as in they are highlighted, but they don't have any effect on in the IDE. And now they will have, like, there will be some inspections.
Nice.
There's also one thing that I want to mention is multi-composer support. So imagine that you have a project with multiple services and they are literally different applications inside one project. They all have, each of them has their own composer.json with own dependencies, maybe even different language level. For example, if one of your services is newer, you updated it to a newer version of PHP, it can have different PHP versions. So currently this is not supported in PHPStorm, but it will be supported at some level in the next version. So PHPStorm will handle this correctly, and you could have different test configurations and other things in your composer.json. So we see that many teams have such projects, so it really makes sense for this kind of thing. For example, I use it with my serverless project. So I have multiple functions. Each function is a separate application technically because it has its own composer.json dependencies. Usually they are similar. They all have the same language level, but still they are different applications. It would be nice to have this support, and it's coming in PHPStorm. So check this blog post in details, and if you want to learn more.
Cool.
The next one is a WebAssembly topic. So briefly, there is these guys from VMware. You know, VMware is a very well-known company that does a lot of, they have a lot of tools for virtualization and other things. So one of the teams from this company, they're working on WebAssembly support for PHP, basically, so that you can compile PHP to WebAssembly and then run any PHP script in your browser or any WebAssembly runtime. And you could do it before yourself. I know Marcel did that with his Tinkerwell, and other guys did that. It's pretty common approach. I think even Eval does the same with this. If we go to back to Eval, and there is this live preview option. So basically, it runs your code with something like a WebAssembly in your browser.
Cool.
Yeah, but what they do is they provide pre-built compiled modules that you could use, and you don't need to compile them yourself.
Yeah.
And they also provided they provided a few patches to PHP in order to make it more easier. So it's pretty cool. And the side effect of that is that you could use some security analysis features from WebAssembly projects. But why I am personally very excited about this is that because it could bring us to the topic of having self-contained binaries for PHP scripts. So think about it. When you let's say you want a CLI application, CLI script with PHP distributed. Your PHP developers, the users who are PHP developers, they can run it easily because they most likely they have PHP installed locally.
Yeah.
Maybe not the latest version, but it's okay. You can write script that runs on any version. But for users that don't have PHP installed, they would have to install the PHP. And so, for example, if I would need to install another language to run some tool, I would probably not do it. I would just lazy. A real example. So there is this tool actually built by Marcel, Expose.
Yeah.
So what this tool does, it runs, you can run your website or application, PHP application locally, not even PHP, any web application locally, and then have a tunnel to external world and share it with the whole world with your, for example, customers or your teammates, and show them your local work easily. I use it all the time myself. And it's good
for testing and previewing, right?
Yes, exactly. Not for production, obviously. Yeah. And the thing is that this tool, it's built with PHP. And for PHP projects, it works just perfect. You can add it to your dev dependencies, or you can install it globally, whichever you prefer. It works perfectly. But the competitor of this tool is ngrok.
Yeah.
You probably heard about it. It's pretty famous tool. It compiles to a binary. So you don't need a PHP or any other dependency to work with it. You can just download binary and run it. With Expose, you cannot do that easily. So WebAssembly theoretically can bring us to this world where you can just have a shareable binary of PHP script. Anyway, this is really cool topic. If these guys, they shared few nice examples, like using sockets, using Docker without containers. If you're interested in this topic, just take a look.
I also saw that you could run WordPress like in your I was mind blown actually. Well, no, because it's just WebAssembly. If you compile to WebAssembly, you can run it in the browser. But it was a pretty nice example as well. So this is PHP compiled to WebAssembly and then sent to the browser, and the browser running everything, right?
Yes,
if
correctly.
I understood correctly. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So it's PHP running in your browser and then running PHP scripts.
Yeah. Okay. It's actually kind of slow now, because when I tried it out this morning, it was like really fast. But maybe that's...
I don't know. Maybe this my internet connection or something. It also, I think the first time it runs, it's slow.
Yeah, it has to be.
I'm using incognito mode, so maybe it's not cached. But then when it's cached, it's going to be faster because it will have this compiled binary already in your cache and will run it. Yeah. So for testing, for previewing, super cool.
Nice. Okay, it will be interesting to see how this part of PHP evolves, because it's might not be something that we often think about when we're building web applications.
Yeah.
But like the tool, I can't remember the name, but like the tunneling tool by Beyond Code. These are like these small tools that we can build in PHP, and it would be so nice if they just work everywhere. And I'm curious to see how PHP will evolve in this area and maybe grow a little more.
Yeah.
Maybe let's move to the PHP core news now.
Yeah. So we can start with a few RFCs that got accepted. In this one, Ilya is one of the PHP Foundation developers. So he proposed a small improvement for constants. Basically, in previous versions, you couldn't access class constants dynamically, meaning that, for example, if you want a variable like here to be used as the name of the constant, it wasn't possible, and it was kind of inconsistency because you could do it with different other places, but not here.
Exactly. This is one of these things that I didn't know that didn't work in PHP. I would just expect it to work, but it's also one of the things that I probably will never use. It makes sense to make it consistent with everything else because of the dynamic nature of PHP anyway. So, okay, cool. And this one was accepted, right? So that's going to be added in PHP 8.
Yep, in PHP 8.3 next this year.
Okay.
This one is by Derek, also a PHP Foundation developer. Derek Rethans, the author of Xdebug extension, and he's one of the maintainers of datetime extension for PHP. So what he proposed here is basically have more specific exceptions for some PHP errors happening in datetime classes. Note that it's only about the classes. So if you use datetime functions, that this change will not affect you. It will just throw notices and warnings as before.
Yeah.
But if you use classes instead of like generic exception and generic error, in the next PHP version there will be more specific exceptions. So just a small addition, but really nice. So
one thing I'm wondering about is like if exceptions change and code relies on like with certain try-catch blocks on specific exceptions, maybe it might break some code, or maybe it won't if like all these exceptions extend from a base exception and maybe everything will keep working. I'm not sure if the RFC mentions something like that.
So as far as I understand, since these exceptions are new, so they are introduced, you couldn't have catched them before.
Okay.
So you would have catch the base exception.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So, and since these new exceptions, they are inherited from the base exception, your code will still work.
Okay.
So it's not introduced in BC breaks, and I'm happy about this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so this one, asymmetric visibility. So this is an interesting one. And at the time I compiled this PHP Annotated, it was still in voting phase, but at this point it's already declined. But we still want to go through it and maybe talk a bit. So currently in PHP, you can have access modifiers. You can tell that your properties or your methods are public or protected or private. But Ilya and Larry, they proposed to make it possible to set this visibility separately.
So it makes a distinction basically between reading data from a class and writing it.
Yes, correct. And there are different approaches for the syntax. And I think as far as I understand, guys were inspired by Swift syntax because it's pretty much the same there. The RFC is really big. It lists all the possible situations and what's allowed and what not, and how it works with inheritance, for example, everything like that. But
so this is an example of a very good and thorough RFC, but still internals decided that a 2/3 majority requirement wasn't reached, right? So 14, yes, and 12.
Yeah, we can see this how the voting went, and it looks to me that it was not so many people voted for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I noticed that too.
There is even another poll where people could specify what exactly they don't like, and many people just don't like it itself.
Well, that's interesting. I looked into it a little bit when the first version of this RFC was announced.
Yeah.
And I would say that I can come up with a couple of use cases for having a difference between read access and write access for class properties. And of course, you can make everything private and provide getters and setters yourself, but that's just a lot of boilerplate. So this would help us write less code to get the same result. But on the other hand, the reason I myself would have voted no if I could, but I can't, is mainly because we also have read-only properties, and there is like kind of an overlap between these two features. Asymmetric visibility does a lot more.
Right.
That's absolutely right. But as far as I can remember, when read-only properties were added, Nikita at the time also looked into like other alternatives and how much like flexibility do we want with access modifiers, basically. And internal settled back then on read-only properties, which was good enough. Read-only properties still have the problem of not being able to clone classes and override data, but there's another RFC that's going to fix that, hopefully. When I read through this RFC, it felt like it's good, it's a nice feature, but I don't really need it now that we have read-only properties anymore. And I would be hesitant to add something new to the language that overlaps with an existing mechanic that's already in the language. So I would probably have voted no, even though it's a great RFC. And if we wouldn't have had read-only properties 2 years ago, this would probably even have been better, I would say.
Yeah. But the difference is that with read-only properties, you cannot change them at all, right?
That's right.
So if you have already set them, after that you cannot change them, even from inside the class. Or am I wrong?
No, that's absolutely correct. But that's why there's a new RFC now as well. It's called read-only properties improvements or something along those lines. It suggests to add a way to clone classes and override read-only data when cloning it. And for me, like for my use cases, but it's just me. There might be other people telling something different, but I would use asymmetric visibility in 99% of the time to create like read-only classes, but classes that I could still change while cloning them. So my use cases are completely covered by read-only properties combined with a new RFC that adds cloning functionality. So it's very opinionated and just my opinion, of course. But I think I don't see much need for this RFC for my use cases. But who knows? We might get a version 3 that addresses some of the concerns. Although there are just a lot of people that dislike the feature, they said. So I don't know if it will ever get added. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there are examples where when the RFC went through 5 versions. So
that's right. Yeah.
And it's okay. I mean, it's changing the language. So you want... it's okay that the barrier is high. It's better to not introduce bad features rather than... I mean, it's better to not introduce good features rather than introduce bad features.
Yeah. It makes me think when you say like RFCs go through 5-6 iterations, there's hope for generics still. Let's just conclude with that. But also, if people want to share their opinion on asymmetric visibility, just leave a comment down below in the video, and we'll look forward to reading your opinions as well.
Yeah, I'm curious if people have a valid use cases. For example, you said you don't have, and you could cover your use cases with read-only. But if you have use cases, good examples of use cases for asymmetric visibility, list them or mention them in comments.
Exactly.
I think we will not go through the same side cookie. It's pretty straightforward, just adding a new parameter to all the functions that work with cookies.
Okay.
This one is interesting. It's
a big one.
Yeah, it's not an RFC yet. It's it's a draft. You can say of the RFC, and it's actually an implementation. Though it's a extension that you could already use, and it's a set of functions. And the author, he provided like rationale for everything, and I really like it because what I think is having more functions in core is really useful. Like, I mean, I know there are a lot of packages that do all these things, but especially for newcomers, I don't want to think about finding something over internet, choosing the package. If it's available out of the box, I'm going to use it, and it's super cool. And PHP has been known for this for ages, having functions for everything.
Yeah.
There was even at some point a Twitter account, a bot account that posted random PHP function. And I was following this account. I was amazed how many functions are out there, like literally for everything. But the world changes. There are new functions in new languages appear and new approaches. So this is exactly what it is. It's just a set of useful functions.
Yeah.
It's with strings, with stream buffers and stuff like that. So it's pretty useful, and I think it will be accepted if it's proposed as a official RFC.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And on top of just having it in core, it's also written in C compared to userland PHP implementation. So I reckon it's much more performant.
Yeah.
Which on a single example probably won't make that big of a difference. But like if you're using these functions for big data sets or something, it might actually have a huge performance impact.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, yes, most likely yes, but but PHP actually is so smart, and Dmitry Stogov, he introduced so many these optimizations.
Yeah.
Which actually for some algorithms, simple algorithms, PHP code will be so optimized with the virtual machine, this PHP virtual machine, that it will run exactly at the same speed. It's amazing how magic these compiler things are and how complex they are, but they do so many things for us. Which we don't even think about. It's cool.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, looking forward to seeing an RFC created for all these functions.
Yeah, by the way, if you're interested in following the discussions and stuff, there is this website called Externals.io. This is basically a web UI for mailing list. So you don't necessarily need to subscribe to mailing list. You can follow the discussions here. You cannot write here. It's just read only. But for reading and for following the discussions, understanding the arguments from both sides, it's pretty interesting.
So that was it for the core news this month?
Yep. I mean, there were a few other RFCs not mentioned here, but they were minor, or we will mention them in the next.
Cool.
Let's go also through some tools. We'll mention maybe a few of them.
Yeah.
The first one I mentioned is AMP. So if you're not familiar, this is a framework for building async PHP applications. I think there are maybe three major frameworks right now for this use case. It's React PHP, AMP, and Swool. Swool is an extension. It's a little bit different topic, but AMP and React PHP, they are built with PHP, so you don't need any extra dependencies to make async code with PHP. Just add one of them and it will work. So interesting thing about this new major release is that it's built on fibers.
Yeah,
fibers is a mechanism added in the previous PHP version to basically run.
It's not something that makes PHP asynchronous, but it's a way to manage asynchronicity in PHP. And you might actually be wondering, like, is PHP asynchronous? No, yes. But here's the thing. PHP, in fact, has a couple of non-blocking functions built in. And I think there are 3 or 4. There aren't many, but one of those are socket functions. And you can basically build everything with sockets if you want to. Like every protocol, you can create an HTTP client with sockets. And there is a non-blocking version. So you can create a purely PHP implementation of an asynchronous HTTP client. And that's exactly what AMP does. And there's, besides like these non-blocking functions, you can also use PHP to spawn several processes to run at once in parallel and manage all of those with fibers as well. So those are like the two asynchronous possibilities in PHP. What we don't have in PHP, what's built in Node, for example, is like this event loop, a low-level mechanism to manage all of that. You still have to implement that in PHP, and that's the core of AMP and React. And the thing that Swool does differently, because it's an extension, it can do a lot more. Swool actually changes PHP functions to become non-blocking. I hope it's probably too simple an explanation, but that's the benefit of Swool. It actually makes a lot more things asynchronous, while React and AMP are working within the boundaries of what PHP provides. But they are all very cool and useful libraries. And I was looking at packages, Roman, because I wanted to see like, okay, who's using AMP right now? And there actually are a couple of pretty good examples. Like, for example, SOM, the static analyzer, it uses AMP to like just speed things up instead of scanning one file at a time to scan 100 files at once. Another example is Symfony, but they only use it as a dev dependency. But nevertheless, it's a pretty good example. They use it to, I don't know, probably test their HTTP clients in parallel or do some things. But these are libraries that we might not interact with on a day-by-day basis on project level, but one level down, they are actually pretty popular. So it's really nice to see that they also embrace fibers now, which is the built-in solution for some things they previously did in userland. So I think it's pretty nice to see these libraries just keep getting worked on and grow and improve. And it's something that we not very often mention in the PHP community, or at least that's many people aren't really aware of. But this is a big and growing part of the PHP community, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so with the fibers and the MPHP, your code looks like it's synchronous, but it's asynchronous. So, some people ask like when async await functions will be added to PHP, but you can already use them with these things. Like, for example, this is a sync function, and here's await, and your code looks synchronous. You can use it in some applications for some tasks. Maybe for most of the tasks, you don't just need it because the respond and die approach is pretty cool. It's pretty simple. But for some cases, it's good to have this option.
Yeah, and it's also like, for example, I have this hobby project of mine, Aggregate. I made a couple of videos about it as well on this channel. And what I do is scan a list of RSS feeds, right? And you could say you can use AMP to like make 100 HTTP requests at once instead of just going through them one by one. But I don't do that because I use Laravel, which has a built-in queue system, which already manages and splits things into different processes. So on like a higher level, I have less need for something more low level as AMP, because there's the framework already managing it for me with a nice user interface. But it doesn't mean that these tools aren't used, because they are in fact pretty popular, but more behind the scenes.
Yep, exactly. So one thing I want to mention, another tool, is this Enum package.
Yeah.
Enums were added in PHP 8.1. And it's very enums in PHP. I really love the implementation. Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah,
I cannot emphasize how happy I am.
Yeah,
with enums. And this package, it adds even more sugar on top of that. So it's basically a trait, which is called enumerate, which you can add in your enum, and you will receive a bunch of different helper functions.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And there are quite a lot, right? You aren't even half of the page.
Yeah. So like nice. You could do almost any of your use case will be covered by this. Think of it as a Laravel collections, but for enums.
Yeah.
Something
It
like
even has
that.
collection support, but
Yeah.
probably not the Laravel version. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
It's good to see that all this functionality is available with just a simple package. Maybe some things might get added in PHP core if lots of people start using it and ask for it. But in the meantime, this is great to have. So the only thing I wanted to mention that I really didn't like is that the cases aren't all uppercase written, but that's just that's me, and I know a lot of people disagree with me. So
Yeah, I saw your post about Enum style guide, and I agree with you. I also prefer uppercase.
Look at that.
Because it's kind of like a constant. And,
they are constant values grouped together in a way that you can type them. So, but anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
I had to mention it.
I really like this tool. So PHP has different profilers. For example, you can go with Blackfire.io, which is a paid profiler, or you can go with a Tideways profiler, also a paid solution. But if you need something simple for your maybe smaller project, or you need to quickly do something, this tool is free, and it's pretty cool. It comes with UI, and it allows you to profile your application in a really nice way. And let me show you it can even give you a flame graph.
That's nice. Yeah. That's one
like
of
this.
The things you really need when profiling, of course.
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. The screenshot is small, but you get the point. Oh, there's even a demo. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so here's some.
Wow, yeah.
So you can see where your application spent most of the time. Like what part is framework bootstrap, what part is your actually database query or something, and you can optimize different parts of it.
Yeah.
Depending on what's happening. So
and
really
the nice
useful.
part about these flame graphs is that if you have like a userland problem in your project somewhere, it's usually pretty obvious that there's a big red block somewhere where it doesn't belong. Yeah, we need to talk about this, Roman. We can't skip it. PXP.
Exactly. So, do you want to tell something about it?
So, people, I have this dream. PXP, it's another attempt. It isn't the first at creating a superset for PHP. And a superset is a language that's very closely related to PHP, but adds additional functionality and is compiled, transpiled to PHP, and you can run it. The big advantage of this approach in other languages, TypeScript is the best example, of course, is that you don't have to rewrite a compiler from scratch, but you can add lots of static functionality that's checked while compiling your code back from TypeScript to JavaScript or PXP to PHP. One of the big advantages that TypeScript has proven is its static analyzer. It gives so much insight into your code, and lots of people really like it. One of the big examples in PHP, something that would be possible with a superset, are generics. The problem with generics in PHP itself is the runtime impact it would have. And it's also quite a big thing to do to make it work. But it would be possible to get generics working in PHP. But if you want to type check everything at runtime, you're running into performance issues. So if you have a language that's compiled to PHP and only supports statically analyzed generics, so when something goes wrong, the transpiler tells you before running your code, well, that opens a lot of possibilities. And PXP is one of the possibilities. There's also Ara. You mentioned it in the list as well, which is a little more like grown already, and it still isn't ready, but they are working on, for example, support for Xdebug as well, and IDE support, which, by the way, is so crucial for a superset to work is IDE and editor support, because it's all fine having a transpiler and which is able to like do static type checks and support lots of nice syntax. But if you cannot write your language with proper IDE support, you're navigating in the dark basically when writing your code. And that it would mean we'd go back 20, 25, 30 years back in time. And it's just not usable. So IDE support is just crucial. So I talked to Ryan, who's working on PXP.
Yeah.
Shared some of my thoughts about it. I would really, really like to see something like this happen, because TypeScript grew so popular and was such a great thing to happen for the JavaScript community. And I think the same could happen for PHP. But I told Ryan as well, the one thing that's so crucial is proper IDE support. And, you know, if you get that to work properly, you have a chance of this project actually like succeeding. So I hope he manages to do it. Proper IDE support is pretty difficult, by the way. We work on PHpStorm, so we know it's a complicated task to build a new language and come up with not just syntax highlighting, but like inspections, refactorings, understanding the type system. It will be interesting. I'm keeping a close eye on both PXP and Ara. And yeah, let's hope maybe one of these might actually be the change that PHP needs. Well, PHP is doing fine without it, but it would be so cool to have a more statically, strictly typed language with proper IDE support that compiles to PHP. Imagine what would be possible.
I'm not that excited as you about this. I mean, I actually don't. I really enjoy that PHP doesn't have this compile step. And I think many things are already covered by static analyzers. But what I do like is that they build a parser in Rust, PHP parser. Yeah. And it is very performant. And having a parser, performant parser, allows you to build other tools on top of it, like a very faster static analyzers or different other tools. So it enriches PHP ecosystem. For example, there is this, PHP No Verify, I think it's called. So this is a PHP linter built in Golang.
Yeah.
And it uses a PHP parser written in Go. Mm-hmm. And so it works differently. It maybe has less features than Psalm or PHP Stand, but it also is very fast.
Yeah.
So depending on your use case, it allows you to do different things. Basically, the ecosystem, PHP ecosystem, becomes more diverse and rich.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy about this kind of tools and people working on them. By the way, the author of Ara programming language, if you're not familiar with him, let me show. He has a pretty cool library called PSL. It's a standard PHP standard library.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, try. It's pretty cool. So it's like you could probably want to go to implementation, but it's basically some blocks that you could use for different things, including like collections, but also some async stuff. Basically, small additions that you need every day. And it's all typed and covered with the static analysis. Pretty cool. So go check it.
Yeah, it's actually amazing to me how much cool stuff people are building in PHP. And I'm like, how much time do they have available to do all of this?
Yeah.
So
let's go to MISC section and skip frameworks because
the MISC section is more interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about it.
Okay, so this first one, I really like it. So there are, this kind of people who build different crazy stuff with languages for fun.
Yeah.
And maybe you even heard there is a language called I'm not sure. Should I mention it here? Okay, I will not.
I'll bleep it out. I'll bleep it out.
Yeah, but so what this guy did is he was inspired by some JavaScript enthusiasts that built that discovered that you could build any program with a few characters, and he discovered that you could actually build any PHP program with just 6 characters. With just these 6 characters, you can do anything. So he posted a blog post which describes how it works exactly. So you can read. It does some magics with callable and
like binary operations.
Binary operations. So yeah,
I mean, makes sense. Makes sense.
You can read the details, but the bottom line is that he built a tool that basically converts any program to this representation in these 6 characters, and it works. I checked it; it works. So I built a hello world.
And you just pass it to a normal PHP interpreter, and it just
yes, and it works. So this is how it looks.
This is hello world.
Yeah. So this is hello world.
Okay.
So what I did is I can show it to you.
Definitely, go ahead.
I will open my PHPStorm. So we'll create a new Scratch file, and then I'll go to here, copy paste everything.
No, that's nice. Cool.
It's insane.
So nice.
So I mean, it's useless, but for educational purposes,
yeah,
it's pretty interesting.
Nice
and fun. Yeah. So this is the style guide.
Oh yeah. We already mentioned it.
Yeah.
Let's not trigger people too much, right?
Okay. Do you want to tell about PHP in 2023 or versions?
No, the version stats. Maybe we should. Yeah, this is something I wrote twice a year. I look at packagist data and just gather everything and make some charts out of it, and try to draw some conclusions. So we're on PHP 8.2 now. It was released 2 months ago. And you can see in January 2023, there's already a pretty decent amount of people having switched to PHP 8.2, taking into account that it's only been available for less than 2 months, actually. And PHP 8.1 especially has grown pretty well, which is a very good thing, because PHP 8.0 went into end of life when 8.2 was released. So PHP 8.0 isn't supported anymore by the internals, PHP core developers. There are, of course, still other companies adding security support for PHP 8.0 and even in the 7th. But still, it's good to see such a huge jump to like supported versions. On the other hand, there is still a huge amount, more than half of projects using Packagist are still running like basically unsupported PHP versions. So data is good and bad at the same time. It's not something new. This has always been the case with PHP. But yeah, it's interesting to see this trend over time. So I would like to see some more people upgrading soon. And that's actually, it's becoming so easy to do. Like if you're using up-to-date frameworks, they all make sure their support for the new PHP versions is ready before the release. And there are tools that just automate like 80% of everything that goes into upgrading your project. Some of those tools are paid, but there's also tools like Rector that just are free to use and do a lot of work for you. So I would like to see more people update. It's not as scary as you might think it is. Let me just conclude with that.
There is another one that I want to mention because it's a bit related. Why would you want to upgrade? Because besides features, features are great, but you get performance improvements for free. You just upgrade and your applications just run faster.
Yeah, and I remember Rasmus Lerdorf, the creator of PHP, doing a talk when PHP 7 was released. And I mean, he was making estimates, but he said, like, if you have a 50 or 60% performance increase, imagine if like a million PHP projects update and they suddenly all have 50% less need for servers and CPU time. It actually has a pretty significant impact on like the environment as well. So I thought it was a pretty good argument for just staying up to date, not just we're not just doing it for us, but also for our environment and our children. So I don't know. It only, that argument only works on scale, of course. When I'm updating my aggregate hobby project, it won't make any difference. But if you look at the big picture, I think there are only good reasons to stay up to date.
Here's a conspiracy theory. Are the servers providers interested in performance improvements? Because then they would sell less servers. We will not dive deep into it.
People in the comment can share their thoughts on that.
Okay, but regarding performance, Benjamin, one of the PHP Foundation admins, one of the core contributors of Doctrine, so he shared what else was done in PHP 8.2 release, which is not actually mentioned on the release page. If you go to the release, this one. If you go here, there are read-only classes and new random extension, just all features, listed deprecations and stuff like that. And it mentions better performance, but no details on that. But actually, there are a few really cool things. And this one I especially like. So Dmitry Stogov made a change that makes arrays, which are lists, meaning that they are not associative arrays, but just arrays that have indexes from 0 to whatever integer you have, like the size. So these arrays, they work faster, and the memory usage is now double time efficient. So and this is really a simple example to show it. So you just create a simple array of 10,000 integers, and suddenly it becomes less. It consumes less memory. So and you I mean, arrays are used like everywhere in PHP, and you get this performance improvements for free. You don't have to do anything. And there are other things that he mentioned here. He also mentioned FrankenPHP.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we will talk about this one later. Maybe not today, in one of the next versions of this video. It's pretty cool. The last thing I wanted to briefly mention is this article about Nix. So I'm really a big fan of local dev environments. I don't like Docker much. I mean, I get all the benefits and I use it, but when I need to develop things quickly, I really like local PHP and other things. There's always a problem with installing different versions. There is this Laravel Valet, there is PHPMon projects that help with that, but still there is some tension, and I always get to the problems with it. And there is this project called devenv and Nix. Basically, they allow you to install, build these environments locally and then deploy them. I haven't tried it myself, but it looks quite promising. Nix is like a platform for that, and devenv is a language that allows you to basically describe your environment. So if you have tried it for PHP projects, let us know how it works for you. If not, what do you use for a local dev environment? And do you use Docker or do you use Laravel Valley, or how do you
Something
set
else.
up? Yeah, something else. Tell us about local environments, or if you don't use it, also tell us how you use it.
I think we covered most of the most interesting stuff. You can check out the blog post. We'll leave a link into the description as well. So if you want to read through everything we mentioned and a lot more, you can head over there. Roman, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brent.
We want to do this on a monthly basis, right?
Yes.
So, everyone who watched, definitely let us know what you thought about it. Share your feedback in the comments down below. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.